So with this, I will request Madeeha to take on and present the slides in front of our SSGSA scholars. I hope this is going to be a good and very informative session for all of us.
Thank you so much, Kashif bhai, for your introduction. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi everybody, and I hope you guys are hopeful about getting good scores this time, inshallah. So let's start with the TOEFL's pattern. It's a very brief overview. It's basically of 4 hours, and the reading and listening are the longest sections. Speaking is the shortest but the most important one. It's 20 minutes, and the writing is easy, and it's also about 50 minutes. So we'll dwell on each of the sections on how to tackle those questions and what we should avoid doing in order to avoid getting our marks reduced. Before we proceed, let's see the useful resources. These are some of the very useful resources that are also free. But at the end, I've recommended a few resources that you might want to buy, because it's a very useful practice test set. So you have 2 sets. Each of them have approx, I think, 7 to 8 practice tests, and they're very good. I practiced with them. I gave myself around 10 days, and these were the only things I did, and it was an amazing practice, because it's only practice that makes sure that you don't, make mistakes in the real exam. So I would recommend, although it's not a good thing, but I would recommend that if you have a group of people who are preparing for TOEFL test, you can purchase and share among yourselves, because you might not want to spend money on just practice tests. So these are the few tests. You might want to practice them before going on to them, but I would still recommend to buy them. These are very good tests. Before we start, we should look on the comparison between TOEFL and IELTS. TOEFL is usually accepted in most parts of the world, except for some universities in UK which require IELTS, and some in Australia. And both of them have a score validity of 2 years. But TOEFL is longer than IELTS in the sense that it's for 4 hours, and IELTS is only for 2 hours and 45 minutes. They both have reading, writing, listening, and speaking sections, and they both are available in internet-based and paper-based tests. So there's not much difference, except that the score is on the scale of 9 in IELTS, and it's on the scale of 120 in TOEFL. And the only difference being that in some universities, there are a few handful of universities that do not accept TOEFL. So if you are focused, if you want to go for those universities, then you might want to take IELTS rather than TOEFL. So if you have any questions during this session, you might want to unmute yourself and ask in the middle. Otherwise, if you want to ask at the end, you will also have a question answer session after the PowerPoint ends. Also, there is a small fun about TOEFL, that it's valid only for 2 years, so that doesn't make sense, and you have to take an entire TOEFL exam to prove your English capability. This is actually just for fun. So starting with our speaking section, you might want to know what the questions in the speaking section consist of. So first, they have different categories of questions, but you also want to be sure that you answer all of them in the best manner. For the first question, you'll have a statement being made. You'll have to agree or disagree on that question. In that question, you have to make sure that when you're given a 15 seconds time to prepare, and then you'll have around 45 seconds time to speak. So in those 15 seconds time, you have to be very quick, take a side. You do not want to blabber, well, it's good and it's also not good. It depends on the person. You have to speak your opinion, stand by it, justify it, and not beat around the bush. So the things that I would suggest you in the time that you're given to prepare is, in those 15 seconds time, just write down very quick points, and each point should be about one word. This is what you're going to speak. And when you start speaking, because you have it in your head what you're going to speak, just expand on each point. And make sure when after the second beep, when she says start speaking after the beep, you start forming your first sentence, which would look something like this. Like, if this is an example question that students should be allowed to choose their favorite subject right from high school rather than having a common curriculum for all, do you agree with this or do you disagree with this? Justify it. So you have to form your first statement right after she says begin speaking after the beep. You will be speaking, well, students, according to me, students should be allowed to choose their favorite subject right from high school rather than having a common curriculum for all, because then they do not waste time in the subjects that they do not like, because anyway they are not going to need them if they are not pursuing them in future, or vice versa. If you take the other side, then you be sure that you speak the first statement, what is your side, and then you stand by it. You should have your points in those 15 seconds where you're supposed to make notes. Be sure to have your points written down clearly on your notes. And basically TOEFL is all about note making. If you're good at making notes, very quick notes, you will be able to do well. In these questions, there is no right or wrong question. Every answer is correct, but there is a better and worse answer, right? You cannot be wrong by taking either of the sides, but if you support it well, if you are giving, even if your reasons are not good, if you are speaking in a way that seems to justify your side, that is a better answer. So it's all about how you're speaking in these two questions and not what you're speaking. That doesn't matter what you're speaking. So in the second topic, it matters in the way that you're not just saying anything. If you know what I mean. I'm not saying that just speak anything, but in a good way. And all I'm saying is you have to know that either of the sides is the correct side. And even if your reasons are lame, they are not lame. You just have to take a side, stand by it, justify it, don't blabber, and say in a way that justifies it. Your speaking style should be good. It should not be like you're just reading off the script. So in the second question, you have this very familiar topic. This is also one of those questions that doesn't have a right question, but it has a better answer. So for example, I'll give you an example. Like if you are asked to speak about a favorite holiday spot, you can speak like this. Well, my favorite holiday spot was when I went to Goa with my family and we had so much fun because I traveled up for the first time. This is not a wrong answer, but this is very bad answer, because you are just, it seems like you're reading off the script. If you want more marks, you might want to speak like this. My favorite holiday memory was when I went to Goa with my entire family. So these are some things that you want to focus on, like prominence, which is like you give emphasis on the words that are important, and then you have to make sure that you think about the tone choices. We'll work on that later, but make sure that you do not be monotonous. You're not reading off the script. You are having energy, like you're speaking to a person, right? And the next question will be about campus situation. So in this question, you will have first a text will be displayed. That will be basically a news clipping or a notice about some change in the campus. That could be like maybe expansion of parking areas, or maybe change in dining meal plans, something like that. Something about the campus that is being changed. You will read that newspaper clipping. After that, you will have two people discussing that change, and most probably they will be criticizing that change. So all you have to do is make really quick notes of what is being changed when you read it, because you won't get that text again. And make really quick notes of what the people are talking about. What is his opinion? Why is he criticizing it? Write down all the points that he's making to criticize it. Because later you will be asked about, either you will be asked your opinion, you don't know what you will be asked. After you hear the entire conversation, you might be asked to express your opinion about the change. Or you will be asked to express what that person is what that person is holding, what opinion he is holding about the change. You might be asked to express his opinion, how he is criticizing it. So you might want to just expand on the points that you just made. You might have noted down everything, right? That this person is saying that this is not good because blah 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 blah. So you have to make sure that you don't miss anything that he's saying, or just listen very carefully what he's saying, because you might just want to, you might be asked just to speak what he's saying. So you will be asked to state the change that was made in your own words and express the opinion of the speaker, what he thinks about that change. So for example, this is an example of the notice or newspaper clipping of the campus. You might want to give it a read. And then, beginning next semester, the university will not allow the use of bicycles on campus. The campus sidewalks are intended for pedestrian and receive heavy pedestrian traffic. Several minor accidents have resulted from people on bicycles colliding with people walking, and although no one has been seriously hurt, university officials feel that bicycle poses safety risk. Furthermore, the prohibition of bicycles will not be a problem for students, since the university currently operates a convenient alternative, the free campus bus system, which runs between all campus buildings. So this is a change that bicycles have been prohibited. And then there will be two people talking about how this change is absurd and this should not have been made. They will be giving their own reasons, like 1, 2, and 3. You will be asked to state the change and express their opinion, or state the change and express your opinion about the change. So in this question, there is a right and wrong answer. So you don't want to, mess up with these facts. And in the next question, you will be having a textbook passage that will be displayed on your screen. And then there will be a short lecture. So usually the textbook passage will be about some academic phenomena, like anything like global warming or some rock formation or something related to psychology or something. And then your lecture will consist of examples that will be explaining the phenomena. The same thing will be presented, illustrated with examples in the lecture. So you just have to explain the phenomena and described in the text, and you have to explain the examples that the lecturer gave. So you don't want to miss, again, you don't want to miss what you have heard or what you have read, because this has a right and wrong answer. So you might want to make really quick notes. This comes from practice. You have to practice a lot. Maybe take 10 tests, practice tests. You can just as I showed in the second slide, you might want to practice from free resources, or you might want to practice from those ETS official practice sets. But this cannot come just by knowing what it is. You have to practice. So this also has, like, you don't want to mess up with the facts. You want to make sure that you describe the phenomena correctly and you describe the examples correctly. So for example, you'll have this text, and this text will be followed by a lecture that will be giving examples of behavior modification. So you might want to give it a read to understand what kind of text will be displayed. Individuals often modify their behavior based on what they have learned about the possible consequences of their actions. When an individual learns to experience that a certain behavior results in pleasant consequences, that behavior is likely to be repeated. An unpleasant consequence, on the other hand, discourages further repetition of the behavior. While behavior modification can be observed in experiments, it also occurs frequently in everyday settings when individuals change their behavior based on what they have learned about the consequences of the behavior. So this is just a phenomenon. They're explaining it, they're defining it, right, describing it. And then the lecture will be followed by examples that will be illustrating how behavior modification can be seen in people's in day-to-day life, in everyday life. So all you have to do is make sure that you understand the passage very well. Make quick notes of it, because when this goes away, it won't come back. And make sure that you listen to the lecture very clearly. Are there any questions? Okay. Is there any question?
I think someone is trying to speak question, but the voice is not audible.
Can you type the question so that we can? Okay. I think I should continue with my slides. If there is any question, if you want me to slow down, just please write down in the messages below. I'll listen to what you suggest. Okay, there is one question. Are all of these three types of questions going to appear in the same speaking section? Yes, they're all going to be they're going to appear in the speaking section. One by one, you have to attempt each one of them. And there is somebody is asking about the time allotted to each question. Well, there is around 15 to 20 seconds that are given to you in each question to prepare, and 45 seconds given to you to speak. It's about 40 to 45 seconds in each question. And in the last question, you'll have about 60 seconds to speak. And around 30 seconds of preparation time will be given to you in the last question that we were just going to discuss. Does that answer your question, Sarah? Okay. And yes, Hussain Mustafa, there are all these questions. There are 6 questions that are going to appear in the speaking session. Okay, how to make these quick notes? Well, if how to make these quick notes can be, I don't know how to answer that question, but I think if you practice to listening to lectures, those lectures are not long lectures. They are just around 15 to 20 minutes. Maybe sometimes not 15 to 20 minutes. I'm just got exaggerated. They're about 5 to 10 minutes of lectures. And you have to practice listening to those 5 to 10 minutes of lectures and making quick notes. If you practice listening to longer lectures, that's difficult. But listening to short lectures and writing down the important things that they say, I think that will help you. If you practice listening to short lectures and making sure that you write down everything and you don't miss the important point. Also, by reading small passages, you don't have to read long passages. In the speaking section, you only listen to short passages, and you only read short passages, and those passages are to be made notes of. You don't want to miss those notes. So if you want to practice this, practice reading short passages and jotting down real quickly, giving yourself a short time, very short span of time, and then going back to the passage and checking if you missed anything. You might also want to read the passage real quick and then referring to it and making the notes real quick. Like, okay, this was there in the first passage and this was there in the second passage. Go back to the passage and read it. Did I miss something? Okay. I think this much time you'll be having to read the passage. You have around 3 to 5 minutes to read the passage in each question. Identifying the important info and segregating is being difficult. Important info is technical stuff, right? It's a type of mess. Can you clarify what do you mean by it's a type of mess? Atif Afroz, can you clarify what do you mean by it's a type of mess? Anyway, I think this comes by practice. No lecture, no techniques, advisors can help you, because once you start practicing making notes of the lectures and making notes of the passages, then you will understand what's wrong. Because I don't think that I can give you some important tips about making notes. It's just that you want to make sure that, okay, this is important. It's like if I'm giving you a reason for why I'm criticizing something, then you might just want to note down, okay, she doesn't like, the speaker doesn't like the way that the parking spots are expanded and the bus systems are reduced, for example. Okay. And as far as the lectures are concerned, you will understand by practice. But sometimes they even ask about those minute details that they have referred, and even questions like, what do the person mean by some sentence? Okay, so if they ask you what do the person mean by some sentence, if you are listening really carefully, you will realize that, for example, they pop up these questions when, what example should I give? For example, if the lecture is going on, and in the middle there is a student that speaks, well, what about the other type of, for example, polar animals, if polar bears is being talked about. For example, what about the polar bears? They're also dying. I'm just giving you a random example. So the lecture then dwells upon the polar bears, the death of the polar bears. So if the question is, what do the person mean by what about the polar bears, then you just analyze what happened after that. The teacher answered the question about the death of the polar bears, right? So that's what she meant. If you know what happened after that sentence, you'll probably make out what did she mean by that sentence. Am I making some sense? You might not understand what did she mean by it, but how the other person reacted to that question, that would help you clarify what did she mean by it. Okay. Does that answer your question? Anonymous. Okay. If that has answered your question, then I might stop on this topic and maybe continue with the slides. Are there any other questions? Okay. So going on to the last question, you'll again listen to a lecture and will be asked to explain the important concept and state the example I mentioned in it. So this is going to be a longer lecture than the previous lectures. And again, you have to make notes. So in this lecture this will be a lecture that will be consisting of concepts, examples, and everything. So you will be given the longest response time in this section. You'll be given about 60 seconds to respond to this question. So it's not bad if you stop before 60 seconds, but it's good, it's better if you get to speak for the entire 60 seconds. So for that, you might want to maybe make notes of the entire lecture, right? The important things, and just talk about them. What did she say? What did the lecturer say? What were the concepts and the examples mentioned in it? So once you start making the notes, you will get used to it. So these are some useful tips in the speaking sections. Don't use these. If you don't know what you are going to speak, just pause and think for a second. Think really quickly what you can speak, but don't use hums, because this just fills in the gap. And these are incorrect words that are used, and that just reduces your marks. If you have paused, that's nothing wrong. It's completely fine to pause, but don't use arms. You might want to speak like native speakers, but in the attempt to imitate them, don't end up being unclear, don't end up being ununderstandable. If they can't understand what you're speaking, that just messes up everything. So you have to be clear, you have to be fluent, and you have to be understandable. Also, make sure that your ideas are well developed. You have proper ideas in your head what you're going to speak about each point, because if you are confused about what you are speaking yourself, then that's a problem. And you have to practice correct grammatical sentences. You have to have a rich vocabulary, but not being that it sounds strange. You have to have a rich vocabulary, but make it look natural. Also, one of the important things that the TOEFL speaking section is scored on is the tone. You cannot afford to be monotonous. This is something that will reduce your marks really badly. And I'm not the right person to explain what kind of tone choices you're supposed to make. Native speakers will give you a better understanding on this. So there is Rachel's English. It's a really nice, it's a really beneficial YouTube channel. You can refer to it and understand how Native American English speakers change their tone choices according to the sentences. And there are two things that you have to, if you are like done with all of the above things, then there are two main things that need practice, which most of us we do not have, being Indian speakers. One of them is tone choices. For example, like I cannot really give you good examples. I would just ask you to refer to Rachel's English, but if I speak something like, if I can give an example about, let's say if I'm answering one of the questions about my favorite book or my favorite holiday spot, then I might, just like I gave before, I might not speak like my favorite childhood memory. Let's say my favorite childhood memory was when we used to our grandma, we used to have so much fun, we used to play beside the river and all those things. But if you speak like this, my favorite childhood memory, when you stress on something, some words more than other, that's called prominence. You might want to use this in your answers. You're emphasizing some words over the other. That gives your answer a better score. And then, like, my favorite childhood memory was when we used to go to our grandma's house. So this is a falling tone. We used to have so much fun. We used to enjoy beside the river. So these are the rising tones. Fun, river. I stopped at the fun and river, and I had my tone risen up. So these are the examples that I'm giving you that you can use in order to improve your speaking score. You have to practice proper tone choices and speak with energy. Do not sound dumb, like dull and monotonous. You do not want to sound monotonous. This is the worst thing you can do to yourself, because all of us, most of us, are monotonous in our answers. And that is because of our, maybe this is something that's common in Indian speakers. But if you want to go ahead in speaking section, if you want to be like on 29 or 30 out of 30, then you might want to practice tone choices. And trust me, it doesn't take much time. It might take like a few hours just to practice these tone choices. If you go to these YouTube channel and maybe other YouTube channels. This is just one example. Maybe you listen to native speakers on YouTube, how they stop at some sentences and how are their questions different from, are you okay? And how are their sentences different from like questions. Like if I'm saying, how are you? How are you? You know, there's a differences. It's just on how you give emphasis to some words, how you end your sentences, how your tone choices differ, how some sentences have different tone choices than other sentences. These things, if you practice well, then you might be like on the upper scale of your speaking section. So you might want to try to imitate native speakers, not by trying to imitate their accent. That is not what we want to do. We might want to try to imitate their tones. Because they score us on our tones. Our speaking section is scored based on our tones and our prominence, our emphasis. And last tip I would give is just when she starts saying begin speaking after the beep, you might want to start framing the sentence that you're going to speak, the very first sentence that you're going to speak. Also, you might want to correct your pronunciation. It's not that you might want to, like just I said, you might not want to imitate their accent, but you might want to imitate their pronunciation as well. So correct pronunciation is the key. If you are pronouncing the words wrong, that's a bad score on your speaking section. So some of the common words that most of us speak wrong are like bury. It's not bury, it's berry. It's not desert, it's blizzard. It's not schedule, it's schedule. It's not zebra, it's zebra. It's not bowl, it's bowl. It's not ethyl, it's ethyl. It's not salon, it's salon. Salon, it's salon. It's not police, it's police. It's not coupon, it's it's not, what do we say? Do we call it coupon? Yeah, we call it coupon. It's not coupon, it's coupon. And it's not plumber, it's plumber. It's not mischievous, it's mischievous. So all these words you might want to refer to the correct pronunciation, to the correct American pronunciation of these very common words that we use, and we don't even realize that we are speaking them wrong. So again, correct pronunciation, correct tone choices, good vocabulary, correct grammar, and maybe correct use of prominence. These are the few things that you might want to practice on apart from practicing note making in order to get a really good score on the speaking section. So with this, our speaking section is finished. If anyone,
Madeeha, I would just like to add one more statement here. When you're speaking, please don't try to use any kind of derogatory words that you may find normal during your conversations with your friend. It does not sound cool to use those words when you're sitting for an examination like TOEFL. So be respectful of that and be very careful of what you're saying. So yes.
Yeah, that's an important thing that we might think that it's normal, but if we speak that use those words in the speaking section, that's a problem. So is there any question? Okay, there is a question. I have a habit of speaking at a low pace with clear pauses. This sounds good, but is affecting the pace, which is ultimately making it difficult to reach the conclusion in such a short time. Well, if you are not able to finish your answer in the short time provided, that's not a big problem. But if you're speaking slowly and if you're having all those characteristics of a good answer, that's then it's a good answer. If you're not able to finish on time, I don't think, as far as my experience is concerned, even if you're not able to finish the answer, that's not a problem. If you cannot reach the conclusion, that's not a problem. But make sure that whatever you speak has all the good characteristics of a good answer. Does that answer your question, Anonymous? Is there any other question? Do we have any for other questions, or should we proceed? Okay, I think we should proceed. So the rest of the sections might not want a lot of discussion. The reading section is just like the reading section of the GRE, except that it doesn't have very complicating and very confusing questions. It just have direct to the point questions. Yeah, is there a question? Okay, I don't think that was a question. So it consists of long passages, longer than what you were used to in the GRE, but they are way simpler than the GRE passages. Each passage has around 10 to 12 questions. multiple choice questions, direct answers. It's very, very direct basically, but you have to be careful when you're reading the questions because you don't want to lose marks for being silly, because you only lose marks if you're silly, because it's a very simple section. So that if you're not aware of the type of questions, then there are questions in which you're like you have to answer so particular questions with by selecting the one of the multiple choices, and then there will be questions in which you are supposed to find similar meaning words from the passage. Then there is a question in which you are supposed to find the best sentence that expresses the given information in the question. And then you are supposed to fit the given sentence in the passage, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Where will this passage fit? In the last question of the each passage, you will have most probably you'll have a summary question in which you will be given about 6 to 8 choices, and you're supposed to form a 5. You're supposed to select 5 of them, or maybe 4 of them that complete the summary. And you don't want to have wrong points, wrong statements in your summary. And the last question is worth the most points. It's about, I think, 2 points, or 2 to 3 points, and the rest of the questions are worth 1 point each. So if you mess up in this question, then you lose the points. And then we go to the listening section. This also has, you need to practice making notes in this one too. So the first section is you will be listening to an academic conversation that will be most probably between a student and a teacher, like about something like an upcoming conference or something like that. And they will be talking about that conference or some paper presentation or some project or some poster or something like that. And you will be asked very simple questions about that conversation. I don't think anybody has problems in the listening section. If you have any problems, just ask me in the end or right now. They will be asking very simple questions like why did the student go to the teacher? Why did the teacher say this? What did the student mean when he said this? All these questions. And then you'll have a short lecture. You might want to make notes of this lecture because you'll be asked questions from the lecture. The short lecture can be like academic about maybe geography, geology, physics, biology, anything. And you will be asked, why did the lecture, what was the lecture mainly about? Why did the lecturer say this? And in between the lecture, you will have people asking questions. So what did the student mean by when he asked this question, and all these things. Basically, they're teaching you what how Americans converse. I mean, students and teacher converse among each other, and what do they mean by particular statements. And you might have an office conversation, for example, between a student and a registrar, or a student and maybe some other official. That is, they're talking about something about the administration, like maybe enrolling into a class or maybe signing off from a course or something like that. So again, this will be like the first question most probably would be like, why did the student go to the registrar? I mean, if the student was disappointed or the student did not get what he wanted at the registrar's office, then that will also be asked, like, why did the registrar refuse the student to give blah, blah, blah. All these questions, they will be testing basically your listening abilities. How well are you able to comprehend their conversations? And then you will have a short lecture again. Perhaps this will be of a different subject, but again, this will be followed by similar type of questions. And you will be having another lecture. So it consists of 3 lectures most probably and 2 conversations. So you'll be asked questions about the lecture. Well, why did the lecturer say that, and what are the, like, maybe sometimes from the content of the lecture. So the tips that I could give you could be only that you listen very carefully, you know, because if you miss, it's all about listening well. If you miss any word, then you miss your scores for that part, because everything is important. They ask questions about almost everything in from the conversation, from the lecture. Yeah, you cannot go back to the questions here in this section also. So if you select a question once, then you cannot go back to it. Sometimes in this question you will be displayed an audio clip, you know, and then you will be asked, why did the student say this? So you don't want to select a wrong choice and maybe go back to it later. You can't do that. You have to select once and for all. Again, effective note making is the key. Write down the important things, and you cannot miss other things. So be very careful when you're listening and when you're writing. You don't want to miss anything. Again, you have to practice. Lecture is important in the sense that you make notes, because conversation, you might remember parts of the conversation even if you don't listen to the lecture. But if you miss a part of the lecture, and then chances are that you probably will not remember anything from the lecture. You will remember less things from the lecture. So make serious notes of the lecture. And yeah, you have to understand the lecture, understand the conversation, understand what's going on, not just write down brainlessly. So maybe you might want to pay attention to what you are listening, understand, absorb it, and write it down. So these three things go on all at the same time. That comes with practice. You have to, again, if I'm repeating it for those who didn't understand what I said, if you listen to the lecture, while you're listening to it, try to comprehend, try to absorb what the lecturer is saying really quick. And while you're absorbing it, just write down 2 words. You don't have to write down everything. Write down few words from each point, just to make sure you don't miss it. But if you realize that writing is not helping you, you're missing the points, then if you can, just give it a try. If you can remember everything and you can answer everything correctly without making notes, and you think making notes is distracting you from remembering the things, then you might try, because it depends from person to person. You might try not making notes and remembering everything. Just remember everything what they're saying really carefully. If you listen really carefully, at least for the next 4 to 5 minutes, you'll remember what you heard, what you listened. If you are trying to remember and absorb it without writing it, because some people, I know some people who are better at these sections without making notes, because they listen, they remember, they memorize it instantly, everything that they just heard, and they can answer the questions, and maybe after those questions are gone, they'll forget everything. So if you can do that, then that's good for you. Then forget about making notes. Just remember everything. The point is that you don't want to miss important information. Either you keep it in your head or either you keep it on the paper. Either ways, you just memorize or somehow just capture the things that are being said. Because they only ask you what was just said. What did the student mean? What did the student say after that? All these things. So this is what the questions look like in our listening section. So why does the professor mention French traders? Who arrived in the Iraq region? You can see from the question. Can you please mute yourself? Okay, there is a question from Syed Hussain Mustafa. Where will we make the notes for yourself? Where will we make the notes for the listening section? Is it typed on a text editor or will be provided? You will be provided with a paper and a pencil. And yes, you will be provided with a paper and a pencil. As soon as you think that your paper is like you don't have any further space in your paper, then you might just raise your hand, and they'll take your paper and give you a fresh new paper. So for each question, for example, if you don't want to give your paper in the middle of the question, right? So when you know that you don't need this paper and this paper is already full, just give that paper and take a new fresh paper. Also, like you had in GRE, you were not able to drink water or even drink water in the middle, so you might want to practice not drinking water during the test, because some people will, while practicing the test, they just keep drinking water, and then when on the test they don't have water, they're like alarmed, what should I do now? So yeah, so we were talking about why does the professor mention fresh traders arrived in. So these are the type of questions. Seeing at this question, you realize that you have to be focused when you listen to the lecture, because he is asking about what was the point of mentioning these French traders. So you will understand what was the point when you listen to the lecture. After the mention of these French traders, the professor might have mentioned something else. So he mentioned these traders to support a point about how efficient the Iroquois canal design was. So the point is, if you listen to the lecture, then only you can answer these questions. If you are very careful in the lecture, like what did the professor mention after a particular point, and how was the flow of the lecture, what was the things that were mentioned first, and then what did the professor prove after that, after that statement. So if you know the flow, where is the professor going from and to where the professor is going, so then only if you know what has happened in the middle, if you know like each step of the lecture, how the lecture has evolved, then only you will be able to answer these questions. So this comes by listening carefully and maybe just memorizing on the spot, or maybe just writing down everything. That's your choice. You can give both of the ways a try. If you're able to write down really quickly without missing on the important information, without losing the track of the lecture, then that's good for you. If you cannot write, you have tried a lot but you cannot write, then just try memorizing whatever he's saying on the spot, because you might be able to remember it for the next 4 to 5 minutes, then that works for you. And also, like the other question, why does the student say this? So you will be listening to an audio that's a clipping from the lecture. And if after the if the student said this, and after what the student said, the lecturer explains more about what the student was talking about, then it's obvious that the student was requesting more explanation from the professor. So that makes sense, right? Like, why did the student say this? Because after the student said that, the professor explained it more. So this is how you answer the questions, how the lecture evolved, what the students were saying in the middle, how the students were reacting or responding to the lecture, and all these things. So the common questions are, what is the lecture mainly about? Why did the student go to maybe the professor or the registrar? You will be asked about what the lecturer mean by something that he said, what can be inferred by something, what does the student say, why does the student say this. So all these questions are answered only if you know what happened after that statement was made. If you know that the professor dwelled more on that topic that the student mentioned, then the student was requesting more information, more explanation about that part. If you know that the student maybe whatever happened after that statement was the point of the statement, right? So you just have to remember what happened. So these are the type of common questions that you might want to practice. Moving on. Are there any questions up to this point? Okay. And then moving on to the last section, based on reading and listening. So this is I think for most of us, this is the easiest section, because you don't have to worry about not losing any information. I mean, obviously in the listening section again, but it's easier than the rest of the sections, because you will be first displayed with a passage that will be making a point and then justifying it maybe in 3 to 4 paragraphs, right? So each paragraph is a point that is justifying the main concept. Then you will listen to the lecture that will contradict each point made in the passage one by one. Each point will be like given an contradiction, and that will be given, like it will be disproved in the lecture. So each paragraph, each paragraph in the passage will be disproved by the lecturer. So all you have to do is you have to summarize the points made in the lecture and explain how they oppose each point made in the passage. That's all you are supposed to do. Sometimes you are asked to maybe just summarize the lecture. Sometimes you're asked to summarize the lecture in a way that it opposes each point made in the passage. So if you read the passage carefully, then the lecture doesn't seem very unfamiliar to you. So whatever the lecture is, it's actually interesting, like how the lecture is opposing each point made in the passage. So chances are that you might remember most of the things because you just read about it in the passage. And it's good if you make notes. For the lecture, you should make notes, but if you want to make the notes of the passage as well, that's also a good thing, because the passage is long. So it might take some time to go back to the passage and read each and everything. So if you like start typing maybe each point made in the passage, and then when the lecture is delivered, you write down how it's opposing each point made in the passage, and then you take your notes from the paper and start dwelling on it and start writing, start typing, and elaborate on each point. Try to make it a long passage. 220 words is a good response length, but if you can reach 300 without compromising the quality of your passage, what you have written, then that's also good. That's like better, because if it's about 300 words, that's like a good length for your response. And 220 to 300 words is a good length. Basically, don't exceed 300, I would say, but don't keep it short, because the best responses are the longer ones. They are long and they are good in quality and everything. So after giving your GRE, I don't think you have to worry a lot about your TOEFL writing section, because you might have practiced a lot. It's easier, and you don't have to worry a lot about this. But again, if you practice, you'll be able to get like 29 or 30 if you practice very well. All you have to do is don't miss on the points made in the lecture, and don't compromise on the quality of your response. It should be like good vocabulary, good grammar, good like coherent ideas. Everything should be like not disconnected with each other. You have to like use proper words that you are using to like on the other hand, the lecture says this, whereas the lecture goes on to say this. So these are the things that you have to remember. It will be just make sure that your response is a good quality written passage. In second question, you will be given a motion and like some statement, and you will be again asked to express your opinion and support it with reasons. So you'll be having 30 minutes for each passage. So you have to choose a side, whether you agree or disagree with the following statement. For example, it is more important for students to understand ideas and concepts than it is for them to learn facts. So you have to use specific reasons and examples to support your answers. After giving your GRE and maybe practicing for GRE, this is something that seems similar to you. So you'll be judged on development of your ideas, organization, quality, and accuracy of the length. So make sure that it's well developed, and you have well developed and coherent ideas, and your essay is organized well. You have good words, good quality words. Your vocabulary is not that bad, and your grammar is correct. Bad grammar means low score. So again, 300 words is a good response length. If you can if you can reach 350 words without compromising your quality of the essay, then it's better, because all the answers that you see online that are given to be good responses, like good scored responses, they are always about 350 to 400 words. So try to make it long, and don't try to make it don't try to exceed 400 words. 350 to 400 words is a good length, but not at the cost of your quality. Make it a good essay that is rich in grammar, rich in vocabulary, correct in grammar, and has a good organization. So when you're given, this is my personal suggestion, that when you are given this statement, you just start typing what you think, and then write down the points. In 3 to 4 minutes, just write down the beginning of each passage, how you're going to justify it. So after you're done, after you have written down the points, 1, 2, 3, 4, after that, dwell on each point, elaborate it. Each sentence should be expanded to the length of a passage. And when you realize you've got 4 to 5 passages, 4 to 5 paragraphs, that's good. Then have a concluding and well-developed paragraph. What you can conclude from your ideas, what do you think? And it's in this question, it's not important that you have a particular side. You can even have, support it and then go against it and say that, well, in some cases this is not good because of this. So you have more to say about it. But the important thing is that you have a proper organization in your essay. I don't think I need to say a lot about the essay, because most of you know a lot already from your experience in the GRE. And are there any questions? Because this is the last section. Out the resources tab of SSGSA. It has a lot of resources. Do check that resources tab, and you'll have a lot of resources in there. So that's it. So if anyone is having any questions, please unmute yourself and ask questions, or you can just type your questions in the message chat box.
Well, thank you, Madeeha, for this informative session.
Going towards the question answer session, so please type in your questions or just unmute yourself and let your questions come, and we'll be happy to help.
Okay, there is a question from Anonymous. Can you please suggest any complete preparation package subscription can cover everything and could help us prepare in such a way that we are able to score something about 105 as Magoosh is for GRE? I would say I'll open my slides again. I have stopped sharing my screen. Kashif bhai, can you give that again? Okay. So I'll go to my resources section again, resources slide. So you have complete, these are the things that you might want to refer to when you are preparing for TOEFL. These are the free resources, except these. These are the complete set. If you have this, I don't think you need to buy anything else. This is ATS Official Guide to TOEFL Test, and combining these three, I guess you have around 13 sets of practice tests. So that's like 4 sections in each set. And if you give yourself 4 hours straight and you practice from these, you will be good to go. I don't think you need anything else, you need to buy anything else apart from this. And another thing that I can suggest that I did not mention in the slide is, when I was preparing for my test, I did not have, because they do not score your writing and speaking section. You can only listen to the good responses. And I did not mention this, but while you're practicing, when you come to the speaking section, just record your responses. Give yourself 45 seconds and stop recording when she says to stop recording, stop speaking. Record your responses as you go through the section. Once you're done with the speaking section, you listen to the best responses that are given. In all the sets, you're given best responses, good responses, average responses. So you listen to them, and then you listen to yourself. Then you see yourself, where do you stand? Okay, like how is a good response different from what my response was. Apart from this, like you're just comparing your responses to good responses. You never got yourself scored, right? At the end of your preparation time, like when you're just maybe 3 to 4 days away from your test, there is a package on ETS website. I did not mention this, I just remembered about this. There is a package in the ETS website that scores your reading, writing and speaking section. It is you have to purchase it. You will be able to buy this package, and if you buy this, you will be given a practice test only for your writing and speaking section, and they will score it the way TOEFL scores it, exactly the way TOEFL scores it. So you will get an idea what TOEFL score you can get, because the ETS official people only score your test in this practice test. So once you know the score, you will be able to get an idea how much you can expect on your TOEFL. And they will also give you why did this reduce your marks, where did you lose your marks. Like for me, I remember my intonation was not good, so that's why I talked about intonation. Then I practiced tone choices, and I practiced how my tone should vary in different sentences, what is the importance of proper tone choices. So they will give you the factors on which they judge you. They'll give you like the tone choices, maybe accent and vocabulary and a few other, these are the few factors, prominence, these are the few factors that they judge you on. Then they give you how, where did you lose marks? Did you have like improper tone choices, or did you have a bad vocabulary, or was your vocabulary good? All these things you will be judged in your complete speaking section if you buy this. And a few days back, I tried searching that, but I did not get it. Maybe if you go to your TOEFL account and you search for, scored speaking and writing section, you will get a scored response. Does that answer your question, Anonymous? So that we can go to the next question. Okay, Iqra is asking how much gap is ideally required to give TOEFL after GRE, ideal preparation time needed especially for TOEFL only. I think 10 days is good. If you think that you need to work on your accent, not on accent, I'm sorry, work on your pronunciations, and you need to practice tone choices and all these things. If you think now at this point that you do not know how tone choices vary, then just give yourself 1 or 2 days extra. But 10 days is an average time, I think. Sometimes even less than that is enough. But if you think right now at this point that maybe you need to practice more, then give yourself 2 days extra. Not more than that, I think. Inshallah would be enough. Is there any other question? Do we have any other questions?
I think everyone is done with their questions, or if we can wait for a few more minutes and see if someone comes up with a new question.
If at some point in my presentation I was too fast or you did not understand what I said, just ask me. I can repeat my slide, maybe go back to my slide and explain again. Yeah, you can contact me through my email address. If you can see my email address near my name, then that's the correct email address. Otherwise I can type my email address here.
Also, I will write a follow-back email to all of you, which will contain the recording of the slides, the presentation, and a couple of resources that might help you for the preparation.
Yeah, okay. Please ask if you have any questions. One thing that I would think I need to say again is that while you're practicing your speaking sections, make sure that you record yourself speaking. Make sure that sometimes you might want someone else to listen to your response. How well do they understand what you're saying and what is being asked? So maybe take maybe ask your friend or ask your sibling to score you on the scale of all these scores. But you also have to remember that for the speaking section, there is each question doesn't have a point. Like you get marks for each question, but your overall response is rated on the scale of 30. How were your tone choices? How good your prominence was? How good your vocabulary was? How fluent you were? How correct grammatically you were? How good your vocabulary was? All these things are noted. Basically, if you buy that scored speaking section from ETS, there is a scored speaking section, like they will score you, that I just spoke about. If you buy that scored speaking section from ETS, you will understand what are the factors that they grade you on. So I think if you feel that you can test yourself in that, you should go for it, because that's a very good diagnosis of how good your speaking is. But make sure that you do that at the end after practicing the speaking, because you don't want to waste that money, right? If you get a bad score, you'll be like, okay, now I'm bad at everything, what should I do? But if once you are done with your practices of the speaking section, try to score yourself. Like, now I have improved whatever I knew I could. And now what further improvements should be made? At that point, take that scored speaking test from ETS.
I would just like to add one thing here. In order to practice for the speaking section, you can probably go to Play Store and download a couple of apps that are only for TOEFL speaking. There you will have question displayed in front of you on the screen of your phone, and you can record your response and then later on listen to it or make somebody else listen to it and rate it yourself.
Yeah, I also mentioned that in the resources slide. TOEFL Go official app is there. I think, is that what you're talking about, TOEFL Go?
I think it was called TOEFL Speaking, IBT.
Oh, okay.
There are some more apps like that. So whichever you find, I think there is one more from Magoosh.
ETS, okay, Magoosh. Okay, then you should search for these apps. Maybe they'll help you more.
I don't think we have any more questions, Madeeha, so we can conclude the session now. Well, I would like to thank you, Madeeha, a lot for taking out this time and presenting to us this very informative session. I hope everyone enjoyed it and liked it a lot. So I would really like to thank everyone else for joining this webinar. I hope you are all guys doing well with your preparations and starting to focus on TOEFL, and probably many of you might be done with your GRE. Usually people take TOEFL in the end after they are prepared for GRE. So I hope you all the best for the examinations, and inshallah, I will be seeing you in another webinar, probably in the month of October, where we will be talking about how to prepare for your applications and how to properly communicate with professors for the grad school and stuff like that. So inshallah, I'll see you next time in October with a new webinar. And in case you have any other questions, you can simply write to us. You have my email, you have Madeeha's email, and we'll be more than happy to help you out. Thank you, everyone.
Kashif bhai, they'll be getting all the slides, right?
Yeah, I will attach the slides, and I will also attach a link to the recording of this session, so they will have all the resources.
Okay, so if they need the free TOEFL, Ahmad is asking for the TOEFL free site, so you can find that in the PPT that you will be mailed. We have in the third slide we have all the free resources and even the purchase resources mentioned. I think that would help.
Yeah. All right, everyone. So it was good having you all. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you so much.